Hitting it live on YouTube, everybody. What's happening? I got to get my owl in the picture. I got to bring the totem. The totem. Let's bring the totem in. Got to bring that totem in. There it is. All right. Bend the brim. Vanity check. 3, 2, 1. All systems are go. What's going on? What's happening out there in there with you, everybody? This is yet another broadcast of 15 Minutes of Flame coming at you live from Flyover. Yeah. What's happening today? Well, just a little bit of information released from the pressure valve of the system. We're going to get into it today. But before I do, I want to alert you to the fact that Miss Emily and I have a new video up over on my channel on YouTube and soon to be on Off Planet. It's a joint venture. And we're doing a weekly MASH. 11th house, off-planet MASH. Speaking of MASH, here's the mascot right here, the man himself, always wanting to get in on the action, Mr. Jasper. Jasper, say hello to everybody. Just get a little glimpse into the old camera there. Is that not a handsome cat? So anyway, you can check that out. It's about Serena Williams, the breakdown. We're breaking down the breakdown of Serena Williams. And Emily, of course, always brings some interesting information to the topic because she knows so much about tennis and the history of Serena Williams. And anyway, it's fascinating to look at it and pull it all apart and kind of see what's going on. So I'll talk about a couple things today. First thing I want to talk about is I'm going to get a little controversial today. So should I be wearing my flame retardant cat hat? Probably not. It would freak out Jasper. I'm going to get a little controversial today. So one of the things that I discovered while I was searching around looking for some intel on the whole Serena piece and her relationship with Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj has a record out called Queen. And, it has to do with her being a queen and I don't know, I guess black women being queens. Aretha Franklin, queen, who just recently passed away, right? So they need to have a new queen. And Aretha Franklin was the queen of soul. And I don't know of anybody else who was given that title, queen of soul or queen otherwise. Does anybody else know? So they had to pass the crown from one queen to the next. So on the passing of Aretha Franklin, we have Nicki Minaj, who does a record, her latest CD. Does anybody even buy CDs anymore? I don't think so. She's probably leaning very heavily on licensing the music for commercials and Spotify. So in this commercial that has been put together by Beats, which is now owned by Apple. We talk about this commercial in great detail, and it's a very bizarre commercial. It takes place in Queens, New York, the Arthur Ashe Memorial Tennis Stadium or tennis courts, whatever you want to call them, which is run by Chase and is actually made out of the Chase logo if you look at it from the aerial view. That's in Queens as well. So we have Nicki Minaj, record called Queen. It's in Queens. Chase Tennis Stadium is in Queens. And the commercial has a bunch of drag queens in it. This is where Jasper gets very into the show. Like literally, he just wants to merge with AI. Starts giving the whiskers on the computer screen. So, okay, you own it now. You own it now. Come over here. Come over here. Lay down. Lay down. Be a good boy. It's like a dog. It's like a dog. You can lay down all the way. It's fine. It's fine. There you go. There you go. No, we're not going to fight. It's like having a kid. I swear to God. Anyway, so she has Nicki Minaj and uh, Queen Serena are in this commercial in Queens with drag queens. She's going to be playing in Queens. There's a record called Queen, 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 Queen. It's the black and the pink. We're not into polarization anymore. Polarization has been resolved because pink has replaced white. Anyway, I started to get into Nicki Minaj a little bit. And I found this interview just recently with her and Ellen DeGeneres. And apparently she has a beef with this guy named Travis Scott. I have listened to Travis Scott's record. It's a pretty good record, actually. It's got some artistry in there. How about that? Anyway, Travis Scott is the baby daddy of Kendall Jenner, one of the Jenner girls. And he is very ambitious. So if you bought his CD, you would get some form of merchandise. You'd get a shirt or a cap. I don't know the full extent of his deal, but he was creating deals. He was marketing. It's called marketing. And then he created a tour. It's not just a tour, it's like a festival. This guy's got a vision. And he sold tickets to the tour ahead of time. Well, it's kind of how it works. It's kind of how the deal works. So he has the #1 record, and Nicki Minaj is #2. She's not happy about that. And she goes on to Ellen and talks about how it's unfair. That's kind of the word she uses. It's unfair because Travis Scott has used the power of marketing to sell records, sell a tour, and be a notch above her. And she uses this completely idiotic logic that he's tricking people. He's tricking people. I don't get this. So she's upset because he's marketing his record, using merchandise, and creating a festival tour. And she's upset. It is completely irrational. Okay? It is completely irrational. And it kind of gets into the same category as what happened with Serena Williams at the US Open. She complains, some people say it's actually a valid complaint, that her treatment is unfair because other men, should I do it again? Other men have outbursts as equally, if not more virulent, although she didn't use that word, as she did. And so we're seeing now this kind of morph into this realm of double standards. That's fine. I get it. I totally get it. But in Nicki Minaj's case, if you want a world of equality, if you want to be taken seriously, if you want that #1 record, if you want that notch on your belt, what are you going to do? You are going to do everything in your power in order to be #1, which includes being smarter, having better marketing people, and not running around thinking that your marketing is just going to be about dissing and having catfights at Fashion Week with other hip hop or whatever her genre is, artists. That's not marketing. It's called press. And press isn't always marketing. The two are distinctly different, although sometimes they intersect. It's just, to me, it just screams at hypocrisy. That's all. It just screams at hypocrisy. And it's like, figure it out. Don't think that Travis Scott is tricking people. He's not. He's actually using these things called business principles, which you may want to acquaint yourself with. And I'm not even going to get into Nicki Minaj's esoteric, illuminated role. I'm not even going to get to her completely tortured and fucked up, traumatized past, which has no doubt led to who she is now. That could be for another show. But here's what I want to talk about today. I ran across this article on Zero Hedge, and they found a video that was leaked from Google And it was right after the election. So this is from Zero Hedge. It's today, 13th. And today's the 13th, isn't it? Yes. And essentially, this video is the aftermath, the morning, MOURNING, the morning after Trump got elected. Now, the video is up for a while. It is down. You can't get it now. I'd love to see the video, but there is a running time code commentary on the video. I'm going to read some of it. But here's I'm going to read you sort of the few opening paragraphs here. Days after Google was exposed to help Hillary Clinton win, yes, that's right, win the 2016 election, a leaked internal-only video published by Breitbart senior tech correspondent Alum Bukhari reveals a panel of Google executives who are absolutely beside themselves following Hillary Clinton's historic loss. The video is a full recording of Google's first all-hands meeting following the 2016 election. These weekly meetings are known inside the company as TGIF, or Thank God It's Friday meetings. Isn't that clever? Sent to Breitbart News by an anonymous source, it features co-founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin, VPs Kent Walker and Eileen Naughton, CFO Ruth Porat, and CEO Sundar Pichai. In the video, Brin can be heard comparing Trump supporters to fascists and extremists, arguing that, like other extremists, Trump voters suffered from boredom, which has, he claims, historically led to fascism and communism. Wow, he's including communism in there. Come on, Sergey. Sergey's from Russia. So he's got that little communist chip on his shoulder. Boredom led to fascism. You know what led to fascism? I'll tell you what led to fascism. In Germany, there was a morally bankrupt and hollow government and populace that had been ripped apart and had all of its wealth stripped away after World War I, thanks to the Treaty of Versailles. In all of the crippling, absolutely crippling reparations that the Germans needed to make after World War I. So we have the loss of a war, which is a complete collapse of morale, demoralization. That's number one. Then you have an economic collapse. That's number two. People were not bored. They were not bored in Germany. No, they weren't. Not at all. Post-World War I Germany, 1917, 1918, all the way up through the 20s and into the 30s, it was not a pretty place. It just wasn't. And there was an incredible amount of moral decay. I mean, you read stories about what was going on in Germany during that time, it'll flip your wig. You had 13-year-old girls doing prostitution. That's how bad it was. So it wasn't boredom that led to fascism. It was a sense that people had lost their relationship to their land, to their culture. And as a result of that, they had both economic and moral bankruptcy. It's not boredom. Not boredom. Out of that vacuum, out of that void, Adolf Hitler rises. Right? That's what happens. It's not boredom. In terms of communism, you lived there. People were not bored. They were not bored, Sergey. Communism was started in New York City. Yeah, that's right. New York City. Jacob Schiff, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. They were all engaged in starting the communist revolution and making it happen, supporting it financially. I talked a bit about it yesterday. So it wasn't boredom. People weren't bored in Russia. Geez, I'm bored. Hey, let's start a revolution. And isn't communism really much closer to globalism, which is what Google is actually pimping out? This guy is supposed to be extremely bright and has had the intellectual wherewithal to start an incredibly successful company, thanks in large part to DARPA and the CIA, the NSA, and Stanford. Of course, everybody can use a little hand up. Just crank that algorithm. Because you can crank a good algorithm doesn't necessarily make you an insightful person when it comes to historical events. He then asks his company what they can do to ensure a better quality of governance and decision making. What can we do to ensure this? And according to Kent Walker, VP for Global Affairs, those who support populist causes like the MAGA movement are motivated by fear, xenophobia, hatred, and a desire for answers that may or may not be there. Well, let's just break that statement down. Fear. Are they motivated by fear? I would say no. Fear exists just about everywhere. Fear is a condition. People on the left experience fear. Do you think they're afraid of the MAGA people? You're damn right. Of course they are. So they have their own little phantom of fear that haunts them. Xenophobia. I don't think so. I mean, I think people, by and large, are tired of having or being told how to live their lives, number one, how to think, how to speak, what products to buy, what not to buy, what foods to eat, what foods not to eat. I think there's a general rebellion around those things. Even if these voices in their head believe that they are telling them things that are both important and true. Whether they are or not remains to be seen. But those voices are the voices that the people on the right or MAGA people or whatever, they want to get those voices out of their head. And finally, there was a voice that was louder than those voices, and that voice was Donald Trump. He got above that noise threshold, and he had a message, and the message resonated with them because they saw what was happening to this country. Now, if you're on the left, you saw, well, everything's really great. Everything's fantastic. Things are going according to plan. And we'll have the soft takeover finished in about 15 to 20 years. We've been working on the educational system. We've got a really strong ally in China. We'll be running the show. We're smarter. We're the engineers, not only of products, but society as well. There are people who are non-compliant. Sorry. That happens. Non-compliance happens. Okay, what else do we have here? He later says that Google needs to fight to ensure that populist movements around the world are merely a blip and a hiccup in the arc of history that bends towards progress. Bends towards progress. Okay. What does that mean, progress? What does it mean? Look, I'll be honest with you. If their version of progress was so inclusive that that people who would say, oh, it's okay to be white were part of that progress, if it was that inclusive, I'd probably have less of a problem with it, to be honest with you. But they're not inclusive. Their inclusivity is an exclusive and limited club and membership that is exclusive of certain groups. It's not fully inclusive. If it was, I would say great. Now, the video has been taken down. I'm going to read you some of the timecode comments. At 000 to 112, Google co-founder Sergey Brin states that the weekly meeting is probably not the most joyous we've had, and that most people here are pretty upset and sad. 24 seconds in, Brin contrasts the disappointment of Trump's election with his excitement at the legalization of cannabis in California, triggering laughs and applause from the audience of Google employees. 0 to 112 again, returning to seriousness, Brin says he is deeply offended by the election of Trump and that the election conflicts with many of Google's values. At 000 to 910, 0910, trying to explain the motivations of Trump supporters, Senior VP for Global Affairs, Kent Walker, this guy's a piece of work, includes fear not just in the United States, but around the world is feeling concerns, xenophobia, hatred, and a desire for answers that may or may not be there, which we'll talk about. 0 to 935, Walker goes on to describe the Trump phenomenon as a sign of tribalism that's destructive in the long term. At 00955, striking an optimistic tone, Walker assures Google employees that despite the election, history is on our side, and that the moral arc of history bends towards progress. Really? What has been the moral arc of history? What can Walker, Mr. Walker, share with us where the boner of moral history has bended towards progress? What would he define progress as? I'm just curious. Walker approvingly quotes former Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi's comparison between the world of the wall, with its isolation and defensiveness, and the world of the square, the piazza, the marketplace, where people come together into a community and enrich each other's lives. Look, I don't have a problem with the marketplace or the plaza or the square. I don't. I think it's and the idea that people from different cultures, different countries can actually have a place where they can commingle, that's fine. But Mr. Walker is completely and utterly out to sea again. Why doesn't he go to Dearborn, Michigan and have a little tour around Dearborn, Michigan? And let's see how inclusive that is. Let's see what their marketplace, what their square is. Because even though there is not a fence or border or a wall, Dearborn, Michigan has become so saturated with the Muslim community, the Muslim culture, that it has become its own, almost its own country unto itself. You know, there's a funny little word that they use for it called Dearbornistan. So that is not entirely inclusive. It has become its own sort of walled-in fortress by its own culture. In Sweden, they have no-go zones. No-go zones. Like, you just don't go there. Why don't you go to the marketplace or the piazza somewhere in a no-go zone in Sweden? Let's put your ideas to test, Mr. Walker. Why don't you go to areas in Southern California where there is absolutely no social integration? People, families from Mexico have basically become communities unto themselves. What's their marketplace or piazza like? It is not inclusive. This idea, maybe in an urban center, maybe in a city, you could have that wonderful enrichment of each other's cultures. Well, what are you drinking today? I'm having a mint tea. It's a very powerful mint tea. What are you drinking today? I'm having a triple latte. Oh, I see. And your triple latte has a dairy product in it? Yes, it does. Well, our culture does not allow for dairy product. Really? Well, our culture does. Well, you're upsetting me now because you are having a dairy product in my presence. I'd like you to pour your dairy product out now, please. But this is my dairy. I'm sorry. You're offending me. You're offending me. These people are fucking out the lunch. Yes, it would be great if we have. You know, I've told this story many times. I lived in Oakland. I managed an apartment building in Oakland, right on the edge of I mean, it's right there, man, on the front lines. I had people from basically the inner city. I had some people from other countries living in my apartment building. I had a really sweet guy that lived beneath my apartment from Senegal. And I used to do tarot readings for him and his daughter and his friend, and they'd bring me food. Man, it was great. I had no problem with this. I have no problem with it. None. The difference here is that what's been taking place in the United States and pretty much the world over for the last 20 years is that globalization has been weaponized. It is not about a country that is truly in crisis. If it is in crisis, we probably created the crisis. It's not about that. Globalization has been weaponized. And it's not only just been weaponized on the streets with what's happening in any part of the United States or Europe or wherever. It's been globalized in the marketplace as well. Right? Globalization has been weaponized in the marketplace as well, with outsourcing to various countries, China, India, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, let's keep going here. At 1310, Ruth Porat appears to break down in tears when discussing the election result. I'd call that the Nicki Minaj effect. Porat promises that Google will use the great strength and resources. We will use the great strength and resources available to us. And reach. Yes, we have to continue to advance really important values. We will use it. We have the Leviathan. Unleash the Kraken. Porat promises that Google will use the great strength. Yes, really. At 1650, stating, we all need a hug. Isn't that so funny? Let's kill the motherfuckers! Oh, we all need a hug. Kill him! She then instructs the audience of Google employees to hug the person closest to them. Oh. 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 Can you imagine what's going on in their head? Oh, I know this guy. He's got fucking bad breath. Do I want to hug him? Oh, shit. He always has an Indian every night. Then he smokes a cigarette and has a cup of coffee in the morning. At 2024, Ellen Naughton, VP of People Operations, promises that Google's policy team in DC is all over the immigration issue and that the company will keep a close watch on it. We're all over it. Don't worry. We have your back. We have their back. They will no longer be wetbacks. They will be dry. They will come here. We will bring them to Google. We will set up an immigrant city right here. And each and every one of you will get to take one of these wonderful people home at night and share your space with them. That's how committed we are. Of course, Larry and Sergey and myself will not be doing this because we have clauses in our contract. Naughton jokes about Google employees asking, can I move to Canada after the election? She goes on to seriously discuss the options available to Google employees who wish to leave the country. How about that? If you want to leave, completely understand why you would do it. Here are your options. What a great company to work for. Let's see, what else? 2312, Naughton does acknowledge diversity of opinion and political persuasion and notes that she has heard from conservative Google employees who say they haven't felt entirely comfortable revealing who they are. You think? And urged tolerance. Several months later, the company would fire James Damore, allegedly for disagreeing with progressive narratives. It's true. Tolerance. I urge you tolerance. Tolerance is such a scam. We know why? Because tolerance has its limits. right? You can practice tolerance, but at some point, guess what? You become intolerant. I'm sorry, I've been intolerant as much as I can. I can no longer tolerate this. No longer tolerate this. The actual spiritual doppelganger of tolerance is compassion. Compassion. It's a very different vibration. Let's see. At 27, responding to a question about filter bubbles, Sundar Pichai promises to work towards correcting Google's role in them. At 27:30, Sergey Brin praises an audience member's suggestion of increasing matched Google employee. Well, I was just want to make sure I'm good here. Yeah, we're good. Hey, hi, Judy. What's happening? Just want to check in via the chat room. Let's see. At 34:40, Brin compares Trump voters to extremists, arguing for a correlation between the economic background of Trump supporters and the kinds of voters who back extremist movements. Brin says that voting is not a rational act and that not all Trump's support can be attributed to income disparity. He suggests that Trump voters might have been motivated by boredom rather than legitimate concerns. No, they're motivated by the fact that a lot of them are out of work. They have to work 3 fucking jobs. They're not like you Google employees. If you're going to have a filter bubble, you should use it inside of your own company. Okay? Use it inside of your own company. Use your filter bubbles. No, they're not bored. They're people's lives who've been wrecked by globalists. An employee asked if Google is willing to invest in grassroots hyperlocal efforts to bring tools and services and understanding of Google products and knowledge so that people can make informed decisions that they are best for themselves. Pichai's response: Google will ensure its educational products reach segments of the population they are not currently fully reaching. Could you imagine the person asking that question? He responded positive, like, oh, yes. That's such a good question. Such a good response. Oh, the world is making sense again. Okay, here we go. Google, it's 1 hour and 1 minute 15 seconds. The Google employee states, speaking to white men, there's an opportunity for you right now to understand your privilege, and urges employees to go through the bias-busting training. Read about privilege. Read about the real history of oppression in our country. He urges employees to discuss the issues you're passionate about during Thanksgiving dinner, and don't back down and laugh it off when you hear the voice of oppression. Speak through metaphors. Every executive on stage, the CEO, the CFO, 2 VPs, 2 co-founders applaud the employee. Speak through metaphors, meaning confuse the fuck out of the people that you're having a dinner with, that you're supposed to be celebrating family with, and in general, be an ass. An audience member asked if the executives see anything positive about this election. The audience of Google employees and the executive on stage burst into laughter. Boy, that's a really tough one right now. John Dvorak, who was one of the pioneers of Silicon Valley, this was his tweet. Oddly creepy, especially when the CFO begins to sob for Hillary. But the underlying message makes it obvious that Google does not share any traditional American values, but is all in for globalism and one world government. These are Google values. A shame, really. This guy was one of the founders. Dvorak is one of the founders of Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley culture. It's true. They are all in for globalism. This is what the search engine, Google, the apparatus, is invested in. And it is troubling. Absolutely troubling. The video has been removed, so you cannot watch it. I would have played some of it, a portion of it, but I wanted to share it with you. Now, there's another piece that I wanted to sort of attach onto this. And that has to do with the fact that even though theoretically we have had, in many regards, a cultural revolution in this country since 2016, whether you like it or not, whether people are into it, whether they want to vomit, puke, there was a cultural revolution that did take place. And the other side is doing everything in its power to completely stop it in its tracks. And even people on the inside of the so-called cultural revolution are doing the same thing. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is how, in many ways, the people who actually voted for Trump are getting fucked. They're getting fucked from the Trump side of things, by inside of the State Department, whether it's people like Mike Mattis or Kelly or Jeff Sessions, whoever, they're getting fucked. I'm sorry, they are, and they're sort of getting fucked on the left because the left can't stand them, and they'll want to spirit cook them. To be honest with you, right? So here's where I feel that there is a real sense of, I would call it alarm, but it's close to a crisis. Because I feel as though that even though on some level this whole Trump circus, in some regards, has been actually really good to continue to have people going through this process of opening up and waking up. But I don't feel like there's a lot of real beachhead support for the process that's been taking place. You know, early on in Trump's administration, there were announcements about companies like Train or Ford or whoever, bringing their products and their companies and everything back to America. And we don't get that anymore. Have you noticed that? We haven't had anything like that announced for almost 2 years. And what's happened is that the economic program of the US has been one of defensiveness and attacking. Well, defensiveness that's become an offensive maneuver, and attacking other countries through tariffs, sanctions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which is a globalist move in a lot of ways. And this is where I think they're falling short and flat. And whether it's Trump listening to Henry Kissinger or Trump listening to his globalist buddies like Wilbur Ross or Mnuchin or whomever, Jared Kushner, it's the wrong advice. It is absolutely the wrong advice. And Trump has been so entirely defensive and critical about what he shares and how it's being interpreted, which I think is not a bad thing. I mean, putting the media on its heels, I'll applaud it every single time. But it feels to me like the real success stories, the areas where there could be traction, where there's a company opening up here, there's another company opening up here, where there's an investment in Main Street versus Wall Street, where people can speak about their successes on a personal level. That's not there. It's not there. And to that extent, I feel like that the I don't want to call them megas, but the people that elected Trump and the people that are really looking for more conservative values. Let's just say it for what it is: conservative values. They're looking for less government. They're looking for more self-determination. Maybe less government to the point where there is no government at all, which I think would be the best thing, to be honest with you. That's a whole other story. But we're in this system and we have this now. This is where I believe the revolution, the cultural revolution, is falling flat. And I believe also is in jeopardy. Because if there aren't what I would call tangible victories, if there aren't metrics that are really adding to the optics of this thing, I believe that you can only go so far on sloganeering and having trust in POTUS. Instead of this dream of removing the threats, which is not necessarily a bad thing, by the way. I think what the people need and what this cultural revolution needs are success stories. That whatever has taken place is working. You can look to the economy, you can look to the numbers, and they can actually, I think, speak to some of that. By and large, that is a part of the narrative that's gone away, and we need to bring it back, and we need to bring it back in a way where it's a celebration of people taking control of their lives, taking control of their economies, and having this participation, greater participation, with the government as a part of that story. If that doesn't happen, I just don't think you can continue to run the same program based on sloganeering and polarization. Let's check in on the chat room, see what we got. And people should visit the Apple. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Absolutely. I find myself not posting things or speaking out because there is no talking. You can't talk with people anymore. Go to the market. You go to the market plots or the piazza or whatever. You'll get hit over. You'll get a condom filled with pee thrown at you or something like that, right? Absolutely. All right, listen. I'm going to get on out of here. I'm going to let you guys get into your day. I just wanted to bring that up and show you, give you a little peek behind the scenes, and to give you a glimpse as to what Google's role is. It's a lot more nefarious than you might have ever thought about or contemplated. With that, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a fantastic day. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for the Friday Forecast.